In this episode of PodCAP, I talk about all things Cap Team Tournament and Equiliibra with the captain of the Sizzling Smokomodos, Jordy. Between his involvement in the Equiliibra process, as well as the Sizzling Smokomodos' success in Cap Team Tournament 5, we discuss lots of interesting and fun topics. But before we begin, PodCAP is brought to you by Smogon.com, reminding you to sign up for the OU Ladder Tournament today. And by the official Create a Pokemon Discord server. Did you know? Equiliibra's pre-evolution is now in the works. Head over to the Discord server today to get into the discussion. And by the Choice Band Revenonx, reminding you to tell your favorite friends that the Jumbao should throw and that the Kerfs should win. Yeah. Thank you, and enjoy. Hello everyone, welcome for another exciting episode of PodCAP. Today I'm joined by the captain of the Sizzling Smokomodos and one of the people who happens to have a scrolling badge on Smogon.com. Please welcome Jordy.
What's up? I'm Jordy. I'm 15 years old, and I live in the Netherlands.
Well, welcome to PodCAP. So tell us, Jordy, a little bit about yourself, because you're obviously a very noteworthy person around Smogon.com.
Yeah. Inside of Smogon, I really like to write analysis, articles, and Facebook spotlights. While I'm also an OU tutor, and of course I contribute to Cap 2, and I'm also a moderator on for the OU forums and Cap analysis.
And I imagine that must be a very time-consuming process, what with everyone who posts on the Smogon OU forums saying like, "Is my team good? Please rate."
Yeah, it's pretty annoying, honestly, but it's kind of whatever. They're new, you know?
Yeah, gotta guide them in the right direction. Yeah. And outside of Smogon, do you have any particular hobbies or interests?
Yeah, outside of Smogon, I go to the gym quite often just to keep fit. That's something I find really important. I just like to chill with friends in general. Play football in particular, and by that I mean the good football and not rugby. And I also like to play games with them, such as Dead by Daylight and occasionally Fortnite if they really want to.
Gotcha. So, and then also a little bit more about you. Do you have a favorite Cap in particular?
Yeah, my favorite Cap Pokemon is definitely Smokomodo. That's also where we got the team name, the Sizzling Smokomodos, from, because I really wanted something with that. And
yeah.
I also have it in my custom avatar on Pokemon Showdown.
Yeah, I kind of figured based on, when you have that as your avatar on Showdown and then you also name your team after it, I imagine that was probably your favorite starter of the three?
Yeah, for sure. I really enjoy using it too, but now that Libra is out, I haven't found as much use for it anymore. Like, Libra just takes its job, really.
Yeah, really. Well, we'll come back to Libra, I guarantee it, because I know you have a lot to say about that.
I do have a lot to say about that, for sure.
Yeah, I'll be sure to talk about Smoko a bit there too. So, now that we're sort of wrapping up Week 2, a majority of the Week 2 fights have happened. I know my team in particular, we're just waiting on Quizell to either take the win or lose and take our tie for the week. I was wondering if you could talk to us a bit about sort of your team and what you would consider your team's sort of greatest strengths.
Well, the greatest strength of our team is our flexibility. I think that considering our roster, we can slot people into various tiers. Like, for example, we can put Highs into SM. We could also put him into SC. Fumbot can play SM, LC, and ORAS. Jordan can play ORAS and SM, which it does make our roster pretty diverse. To add on top of that, our team sports a lot of willingness to try something new, try creative sets, and I feel like that's a pretty great asset to have because people can't really prepare for it. Even if our teams do look pretty standard, there's often a few techs in the sets.
Yeah. So you mentioned these sets. I do sort of have a question about that. With week one and the previous metagame shift, were there any sets that you had used in the pre-Oromoth nerf and Equiliibra meta that were interesting or you thought were pretty fun?
Uh, in particular, or just in general?
Just in whichever, if you have any that come to mind.
Let me scroll through my builder real quick then. Well, a tech I was going to use was Electrium Z CM Paint Split Magirna.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had predicted that Talk Specs would be brought. I originally came up with this idea for the OCT Finals versus Stretch. It would have put in massive work because it would have just Oko Zardwai, but I didn't bring it unfortunately. So I was thinking of like revamping it for this week. However, we didn't get to fit it.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you bring that up because I know Electrium Z is. I would imagine that's probably taken a bit of a hit with Libra being, as popular as it is right now.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think it's actually usable anymore because of it.
Yeah.
Another set that I was going to bring was Toxic Choice Scarf Weavile, which is another set I came up with in OCT. I wanted to really use it to lure in Argonaut for regular Kyurem, sub-roost Kyurem. Because the only thing that really checks it solidly, that you see commonly in Cap, is Argonaut, which Weavile managed to bait in very nicely. And because of that, I figured that Toxic would be a nice fit over Knockoff, considering the team
and
that it was on.
And would that be like, then, you mentioned like double ice almost, where you have you have the Scarf Toxic Weavile and then sub-roost Kyurem?
Yeah, just Choice Scarf Weavile, but with Toxic over Knockoff and Sub-Roost. I think it was ICMZ actually on that team.
That's a pretty cool set. That's icy heat right there.
It is icy, dude. All my teams are icy for sure.
Yeah. And so you've mentioned your strengths. Are there any sort of weaknesses that you might have noticed in your team over these first couple weeks?
Well, in general, I tend to be really weak to a few Pokemon, in particular like Charizard Y, Mega Garchomp. That's a big one, especially right now. They're both pretty big right now because they have a pretty good Equilibra matchup in general, right? So we're definitely going to see a rise in that. On top of that, Jumbao. I don't really know how to pronounce that. I just do it in the Dutch way, I guess. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the original pronouncement is Jumbao, but it's kind of whatever. I think that Drought Offensive Jumbao with Ferium Z and then Moonblast, Flame Burst, and Hidden Power Ground and Shore Up is a really strong Pokemon in general right now. It matches up greatly against all the Steel types, which are what are mostly used to check Fairy types right now. So I think that's a really strong set that often I just lose to it, dude. Like, there's not a lot I can do about it.
Yeah, I really feel that, and especially that Jumbao set too. Well, and okay, first off, the Mega Garchomp set that you mentioned, I feel like is amazing versus Libra, just because, especially bulletproof variants, since we're seeing that bulletproof is so much more relevant than people maybe initially thought, that Chomp can beat it with Earthquake or with Fire Blast. And then also you mentioned that Jumbao set with Moonblast, HP Fire, or HP Ground, and Flame Burst. And that kind of beats Pharaoh, Tran, and Equilibra all kind of at the same time.
Yeah, like, well, it doesn't necessarily beat Equilibra, but it puts great pressure on Equilibra since they often rely on Equilibra. Unless they have Talk Specs, which I think every Bulky Water in the metagame synergizes greatly with Equilibra. They all beat certain stuff.
Even Snailstorm.
Oh no, Snailstorm's so terrible, dude.
Oh yeah. So let's sort of move on then to just some last week one stuff, just because I got to talk about week one a bit since it's still slightly relevant. So with this new team, the Sizzling Smokomodos and everything, when you drafted them, how did that first week in general go? Since I know you guys were able to pull out the win that first week.
Yeah, in terms of playing or in terms of prepping and stuff, what do you mean exactly by did it go well?
So were there any particular matches or fights that went really well? And then also, I guess, if there were any fun moments in your team's Discord or whatever?
I think, let me pull up week 1 for it real quick. Yeah, Jordan versus Eternal Snowman was that was a great battle, I'd say. Even if it was slightly hacksy, for sure. Most of our matches were hacksy. I also think Highlighter did pretty great against Marination.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, your team's fights were very very convincing and definitive from the ones that I watched in preparation for this interview. So that was pretty good. What would you say was the most important match for your team last week? Both whether that was like a huge win or a morale win. Which one was?
I think that the most important match was probably Jordan against Eternal Snowman, since I predicted that the outcome would depend on that. In terms of matches that I was really hyped for, I wanted to see Ming against Funbot. We had a pretty fun team prepped, I'd say. And I know that Ming likes to use ridiculous stuff, really. Unfortunately, nothing came of that match. Stresh against Volkner. I thought that was unfortunately it was really hacksy. It was ridiculous. That I would have been really interested in that one because they're both pretty good friends, and for the same reason, I was really hyped for my own match against SHSP. It was a repeat match from last year.
Yeah,
we played last year too. And I really look up to SHSP. I think he's a pretty great player, honestly.
Yeah, and that was a captain's match too, which I think brought even more like excitement to the whole matchup.
Yeah, for sure.
And you had mentioned Ming as well, and I'm just thinking Ming had his match earlier today, and they brought like Mollix and Tyrantrum.
That I don't know how that team came to exist. I don't want to know why, honestly. But
frankly,
it looks
it was
ridiculous.
like 2 a.m. for me, and I was just watching.
Yeah,
I
don't think I caught it live, but yeah, I didn't catch it live, but still, like
it was just like, oh my god, I can't believe that was a real team. Ming really is a little crazy.
Yeah, dude, I've heard that he almost qualified for OLT with a Yamaga, dude. He's crazy.
Yeah,
he's crazy. It's so simple.
Yeah, SHSP had mentioned that in his episode.
Yeah.
That's so funny to me. So let's sort of getting back to a few other questions, just a few last ones about week 1. Were there any other big matchups that weren't from or other fights that weren't from your matchup versus the Kerfluffles that was interesting or exciting to watch for you?
Well, Joe against Finch was a match I really anticipated, even though it was a bit anticlimactic due to the way Alpha played. I don't mean any offense by that. But they're both pretty good friends of mine. I interact with them both pretty regularly. Yeah, I'd say that was the main match I was excited about.
For sure.
The other match I wanted to see was MX against QZeal, because QZeal is a pretty good player, new to cap, like you mentioned. Wait. Sorry, I mixed it up with the last PodCAP.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
No, QZeal is pretty new, and I think he's generally a good player, and his prep was crazy. It was a good match for sure.
Yeah, I know he's been a very helpful member on the team. He's helped me prep for my NU tour for Slam too. So he's a really, really exciting guy to watch, and our team win or tie this week comes down to him, whether he wins his match. I think it's later tonight. So definitely one to watch there. Not to make it about me, but
I might catch it if it isn't too late by then.
Yeah. So one thing I'd like to ask about your match with SHSP, since it was such a big match. You had sort of mentioned that you sort of had some assumptions going into the fight in general, with what he was bringing, some sets that he had. But could you sort of talk about that a little bit?
Right. So, it was really just something stupid on my part, right? I don't really pay attention to the chat too much when playing, but when Celesteela came in, it didn't reveal leftovers, and I know that Ming likes to use crazy shit, so maybe I'm there like, well, maybe it's like Flying EMZ or something, dude. So that was the reason why I didn't pursue trap the Mega Diancie, because I didn't want to give it an autotomize.
Right.
Which it, of course, didn't end up having. I would have, of course, pursuit trapped it if I knew that leftovers would have been revealed regularly, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I feel like, too, it's not totally out of the question to say, like, if it's not lefties, it's pretty likely Flying EMZ. I mean, you don't see Life Orb steal it all.
I've seen on a ladder team that peaked pretty high,
Right. All right. So let's then move away from week 1 and talk about going into week 2. So week 2 is kind of coming to a close here, but if we sort of think about the transition from week 1 to week 2, how do you, as a team that actually won last week, won your matchup, how do you keep the morale moving into week 2?
We just kept on doing what we were doing, like, since 2 weeks, since our Discord came to be. Of course, it was a bit different because of the influence of Equiliibra, which heavily, it made me and Stretch struggle to build teams for our SM. But that wasn't too big because Terra is crazy, dude. He is so crazy. I really love him. He's so good. And
yeah, Terra's match I saw already too has been insanity.
Yeah, I think that was a really good match, honestly. But in general, as a manager, while I realize that it can be annoying at times, I don't try to doing it too often, but I generally try to be pushy because I really want to have our team prepared a few days before the match,
right.
So that we have enough time to make adjustments and such. I really want to filter down our sets. And of course, I want to show that we do care about winning and that we're not just all playing for ourselves. It's a team tour, of course.
Yeah. I think that's one thing that a lot of captains of team tours have to sort of take into account is how do they keep the players remembering that, just because they may either won or lost doesn't mean that they actually overall won and that they have to keep the team morale high as well.
Yeah, I think team morale is really important because if your team's not motivated, nothing's going to come of it, really.
Right.
Like, your players may be good.
Crucial factor.
Your players may be good, but nothing's gonna come of it if they don't really care.
Yeah, exactly. So getting those teammates sort of all together is crucial.
Yeah, good. I'm bringing that up. That was pretty big too. Everybody that's on my team, most aren't actually cap mains. Most are from the other metas community, so they have actually teamed already before. So we all click together pretty well.
Yeah, that's one thing. I'm looking at the roster that you have too. A lot of these players are more or less known for playing other tiers, and it seems like they've sort of come to cap because it's yet another team tour. Specifically, I'm looking at some of these players you had mentioned, like Terra and Stresh. I know Stresh is kind of involved in cap, but either way, Plaz is kind of cappy, but I digress.
And Jordan too,
Yeah. All right, so. So then we're looking at this lineup here that you have. Are there any fights from this matchup that you're excited to watch that either have happened or are happening right now as we're recording this or that are soon to happen?
Well, matches that are exciting. I think Jordan against Joe was honestly crazy. I really loved that team. I built it. I built it. And Jordan actually managed to play Offler or Joe. I'm sorry. Every turn aside from the toxic on Tyranitar, dude, it was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, watching that fight, even Offler even said like brilliant prep near the end, and it's hard to know if that's sarcasm or not. But looking at this team,
I was scouting him a day before the matchups even went up because I just assumed Offler was gonna play. I noticed that Mega Maniac just went in. Like, there was nothing you could do about it. No counterplay, aside from AV Colo occasionally.
Yeah, and looking at this matchup, I have the replay open. Looking at the matchup Mega Manetric has against Ferrothorn, Clefable, Slowbro, Talonflame, Exca, and Tyranitar, Mega Manetric puts in work on like at least half of this team, if not more.
Yeah, it went crazy that game for sure. I don't think it's a good Pokemon per se though. Like it's really you have to get the matchup for it to actually work for sure.
Yeah. It's one of those mons, like, you build a team around it, but it's not something that you would just put on any other team, you know?
Oh, no, for sure not. You have to be confident that you're going to get a good matchup to bring it.
Exactly. Yeah, so that was really interesting. If you had any other thoughts about that sort of team that you, this Mega Manetric team, feel free to share them if you feel so inclined to do so.
Well, I don't really have any other thoughts. I just think it's a decent team in general. Although I really wouldn't recommend it if you're not confident with Mega Manetric having a good matchup like I mentioned.
For sure, for sure. So then, are there any other matchups from, or I guess fights from other matchups that are happening this week that you think are definitely big, exciting matches?
So QZeal against SHSP. That's definitely going to be an interesting one. Like I mentioned, I think QZeal's a really good player in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I really look up to SHSP. I think that the fact that QZeal is new and he has shown that he can be innovative and knows what he's doing for sure. I think that this would be a really good game. And another game that, well, it's happened already, but I thought that Frostbite against Heaven J could be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Both are pretty unorthodox builders, though. Obviously, they're both a bit one-dimensional in the archetypes that they use.
Yeah. And looking at that too, I think Heaven J brought the first really successful version of Libra stall I think we've seen so far.
Yeah. Well, I don't know why there was a Rotom Heat on that team. I cannot tell you why. There's absolutely no reason for that team to be on there. There's no reason. Snailstrom, I can kind of get, okay. There's Equiliibra hype. I can kind of get it. But Rotom Heat, I didn't get it, dude.
I don't see it either. Like, honestly, even Rotom Cut would have been a better answer than Rotom Heat, I feel like.
Yeah, probably, dude. But
just a better answer to
that's a big thing about
types.
Heaven J too, I think, that he isn't scared to use unorthodox stuff, even though stall is relatively straightforward.
Yeah. I haven't had a chance to watch this battle in full. I did see the tail end of it when Frost ended up forfeiting. But it definitely, Jay's team definitely seems like it's the first true version of Libra stall, and I have a feeling that we'll be seeing a lot of that going forward.
Well, Haylighter and Neo, I'm just gonna reveal it. Haylighter and Neomon are gonna play soon or are already playing. I don't know for sure. But we're actually bringing stall too.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, we're bringing stall too.
Yeah, I promise not to reveal that, so all good.
It's not like Equiliibra stall though. I don't think Equiliibra is actually that good on stall, you know?
Oh, can you elaborate on that a bit?
Well, as a Bulky Steel type, Bulletproof specifically here, right? Because you're gonna need it for Tapu Lele, because that's the big Psychic type for stall to deal with. Well, I generally think that Jirachi just provides more between Wish and U-Turn. U-Turn means you don't, well, you could get trapped by like a Scarf Zone, slowly get chipped down, right?
Mm-hmm.
But U-Turn, that just frees playing around certain threats so much. Well, of course, Doomsday is threatening too. Wish is the big one here, I think, because it allows Chansey to run Heal Bell.
Yeah. And the one thing I think, too, is that Libra doesn't have to worry about being trapped as much by Zone. I feel like it's a lot more dangerous to be trapped by even, like, Pajantum, just because of, you know, unless it's not Scarf Mag, if it's, like, some heat, like, Magnet Rise Magnezone, then we'll see that. But, you know, you raise a valid point.
Yeah, generally, also, I just think that Equiliibra doesn't... well, it's good, of course. It's a very good Pokemon. I think you could argue for it being broken, honestly. But I don't think Stall's the right fit for it.
Fair enough. So what would be the right fit for Equilibre then?
Just general balance or bulky offense teams, really. It provides so much for them. Like just completely deleting Mega Alakazam from the game. That's really big. And
assuming you're running Bulletproof.
yeah, assuming you're running Bulletproof, I've generally found that to be an easier fit on these type of teams.
Yeah.
Levitate's of course
that's
great
the thing.
too, but because nobody wants to use Garchomp right now, I'm really hesitant to use it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one of the things too that is kind of funny is that no one's going to click like a ground move on Equilibra just on the off chance that it is Levitate.
Well, unless you're running Megaladios, that's never a play. Like Megaladios, I definitely think is worth scouting for. But of course, you also have to take into consideration, well, the build at hand. Of course, that's a big one. But generally speaking, like I said, Bulletproof is easier to fit, so I definitely think it's worth scouting for with Megaladios because that doesn't get punished as hard.
And the other thing too that I think is going to rise in usage to almost in a weird way see what Libra is are spikes.
Spikes.
Yeah, and the reason I say that is just because, you know, you can see what set the opposing Equilibra is just by, you know, having a layer of spikes down, because obviously if it takes spikes damage, it's going to be Bulletproof or Justified, but like, you know.
Well, throughout the process, spikes was a really big component for the argument of Levitate, right? Mm-hmm. It's definitely pretty big. I actually think, even though since the Levitate discussion, spikes have slowly died down a bit. I wouldn't say they're dead, of course. They're really good hazards, but Greninja in specifically Greninja, right? That mount slowly started dying just because of how hard Mega Alakazam could punish that. Yeah. However, because we have Bulletproof Equilibra now, Greninja doesn't get punished at all. And it's honestly a really good mount right now.
I can confirm that I, too, have seen the light of Spike's Greninja again since Libra's come out. So,
yeah, it's definitely a very good choice right now.
Yeah. So there's other parts of Libra, too, since we're on the topic of that. You were the ability leader, and you've sort of discussed the changes or the talk about Levitate versus Bulletproof and everything. Was there any other parts of being the ability leader for this process that you felt were important, or did you feel that this process was ultimately pretty good?
Well, I just think the process generally was of high quality. I think we as a TLT worked pretty well together, and of course the community was pretty active throughout, and as a result, I think the discussion was really thorough, even though we couldn't foresee that Bulletproof would be better than Levitate. You cannot really predict that.
Right.
Yeah, I just think it was really good, honestly.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And I also feel like the conversation that was had on Cap 26, the process was significantly better than 25's, just because it was easier to hone in our focuses on one specific mon as opposed to three.
Yeah, I think that doing 3 mons is really what held Cap 25 back, and I think that seeing how Equilibra was one Pokemon, it was a lot easier to just focus on that.
So you mentioned earlier in the Discord chat that you felt that Toxic would be kind of almost quote-unquote too much on Equilibra. Could you sort of elaborate on why you might feel that way about this mon and that move?
Yeah, I definitely can. Of course, removing Toxic is not a possible play. Every Pokemon gets it except for a select few very niche Pokemon like Smeargle and I think Ditto and Magearna too. Which Equilibra obviously doesn't fall under. So, but you have to consider Equilibra as a mon, right? It's checks and counters. Let's see. Rotom Wash, Argonaut, Celesteela, Mega Latias is a pretty good check. Charizard Mega Y. Yeah, those are the 5 main Pokemon I'd consider, at least right now. I guess there's some niche Pokemon like Snailstorm, which is still super bad, and Gyarados, which I'm not convinced by yet. But when you look at that list, Rotom Wash, Argonaut, Charizard Y, they all get crippled very hard by Toxic, right? And considering how hard it is to wear Equilibrium down consistently, the game goes on for longer, right? So you get more opportunities to fire off Toxic, fire off Doom Desire, and it just feels like an uphill battle, really. And I feel like Toxic's definitely the main culprit of that.
Yeah, and I'm looking it up now, but you're right, Magearna does not get Toxic. And the other thing, too, that you had sort of mentioned, Gyarados, I'm not going to die on a hill for Gyarados, but I do think that it is an answer to Equilibra. Is it a good check? Hard to say, but because obviously it doesn't want to switch in on a Toxic, and it's kind of forced to run sub when it might want that Earthquake coverage or the Fall coverage, depending on which set for Gyarados you use. But I will say that Flynium Z Gyarados, I used that in my fight this week, and it's pretty solid. I wouldn't say it's like the best answer in the world, but it's definitely better than you might think. But that's just me.
Yeah. Well, my main issue with Gyarados really is, like you mentioned, for move slot syndrome to a certain extent. You can't really hit everything you want to hit. And
right.
Rotom Wash is still pretty big, right? That Pokemon's
right.
still crazy. It's still crazy. And I'm one of the few people who doesn't think Coco is dead. You can just run a U-turn and you still go crazy against Equilibra teams. Which is also a pretty big bother.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing, too, that if we go back to my fight again, because it's all about me, one of the things, my opponent bought screens this week, and we found out that Libra, if you use Doom Desire on Libra and then switch out, it's not Doom Desire isn't affected by screens, which does sort of raise the question, is screens going to be dead by this discovery?
Oh, screens is... It's been murdered. It's not a thing anymore. This is honestly just because the only good setter, the genuinely good setter, is Tapu Koko, right? And it just invites Equilibra in, or you don't get screens, which of course is counterproductive, really. On top of that, aside from Gyarados, there's no good Doom Desire resist.
Mm-hmm.
So it really goes hand.
There is Krillawatt.
Krillawatt. I really question your sanity if you put that on a screens team.
It's only so that you can get that nice electric terrain chip from Volt Switch.
Yeah, that's a solid argument, dude. That's a solid argument. I'm gonna run that.
You better. You better do some text with Krill, because don't be sleeping on my mans.
Nah, Krillawatt's super fire. Still good, man.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, too, is that screens now, they're sort of, Carabolt, Coco, and Lucha being the big sort of screens core. Where do you think these hyper offense sort of goes from here, then?
The archetype itself? Where it goes from here?
Yeah.
Well... We're just gonna go to D rank, really. I don't think it's viable.
Really? You're gonna go that big?
Yeah, as long as Equilibra, as long as the hype is this big, as long as everyone's running it, right? There's no reason to run it. I don't think there's any reason. The payoff, the inconsistency, the risk versus reward that you get from it, basically, to put it into terms, I don't think it's worth it anymore. Which, actually, I think that's healthy for the meta, right? Because prior to Equilibra, we had 4 different, very solid hyper offense archetypes, right? Screens, Hazard Stack, Trick Room. It's not really hyper offense. It's more played like Poke offense now. Yeah. I'd still say that it falls under there as an offense C team, right?
Yeah.
And what's the other one?
Webs?
The other one is just classic Excadrill offense, really.
Yeah. I guess Webs isn't really that good in Cap.
Webs?
There's no good
Cap
setters.
LC, it's crazy, but...
Yeah, Cap LC it's really good, but...
It's not good in Cap, no.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of just it, isn't it? So, it sort of brings in these playstyles, but in a way, I know some people might find that restricting. How would you sort of argue against the fact that Libra is restricting playstyles?
I wouldn't. I agree with that mindset. Equilibra, it constricts you in such a way. Like I said earlier, it's an uphill battle, right? Against Equilibra. It's always an
Yeah.
uphill battle. It gets so many Doomsayers off. It's such a good Pokemon that it always manages to make progress. And at a certain point, say you're facing like Equilibra plus Argonaut. That's just a generically solid core, okay?
Yeah.
Let's say you have rocks up already. Equilibra manages to come in safely against whatever it counters a lot of Pokemon. There's a solid chance that it just gets in freely. Well, you can get off a Doomsire. They'll go to something like
Like a Charwy, for example.
yeah, Charizard Y, right? So then they take rocks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Possibly toxic damage if you have managed to toxic them first, and you could definitely be protecting those teams. I definitely think that that's a tad too restricting.
Yeah, it's definitely possible.
Like, even if it takes a while for Equilibra to get stuff done, it's a hyper efficient mon, right? It does get it done eventually, for sure. It will get it done. Unless you get lured by something like Titanium Z, Tornadus T, which, if I can say so, I don't think that's healthy. If you are...
Why do you not think it's healthy?
No, like, well, you're not forced to run it, but I've seen Titanium Z, Tornadus T so much that I really don't think it's healthy, like, right? Because we didn't see it a lot before that.
Yeah. And now...
Mainly because of Equilibra.
Yeah. But on the other hand, to what extent is it actually just an initial, like, people finding a way to deal with this in the first week that it's free to be used,
Oh, I think we can definitely adapt to a certain extent. You see, there's already people running like Pajantum, Garbage Snailstrom, Charizard Mega Y. These are, of course, all different adaptations already, right? So I think we can adapt to a certain extent, but I still don't think it's healthy because it just deletes a few of the best Pokemon in the game. Just deletes.
Yeah.
They don't do anything anymore. Mega Alakazam one here and Magearna 2.
But on the other hand, I'm going to play a little devil's advocate here. Mega Alakazam is one of those, like, top-tier threats that, you always have to consider when building. So, in a way, this sort of does allow for some roll compression because you do get the Megazam and Magearna check, you do get hazard control, and you also get, like, phasing options in a roundabout way.
Of course, which is exactly what I think is the issue with Equilibra, actually. It's just too generally useful.
Gotcha.
In a way.
And that makes complete sense.
Yeah, you don't... If you're running balance or bulky offense, even offense, I've seen an offense team with Equilibra. It wasn't that good, but it can work for sure.
Right.
Like, Equilibra, I think there's so little reason to not run it. Because it has spin, Toxic's everything for certain Pokemon. Spin makes it generally useful, easy to slap on. And yeah, I think that's pretty much why it's overwhelming.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that logic a lot. So, we'll see where Equilibra goes from here just because, after a week, people are already seeing that this mon is incredibly useful. So,
yeah, I don't think you can judge it right now, whether it's broken or not.
Right.
Of course, I've been a very vocal person that thinks it is broken myself. I don't think the effect it's having right now, at least at the moment, is healthy.
Right. And I will say there's always that it's reactive to a lot of things. Because if we look towards like, Gen 6 in a way, a lot of people initially thought that like, Mega Altaria was broken back when it sort of got released and everything after a while. And then now we look at ORAS OU and Mega Altaria. It's not bad by any means, but it's definitely not like meta busting a Pokemon that people once thought it was.
I don't think that's the case with Equiliibra though. Like, just look at what we make to count, or what we let it counter. Garchomp, Megalakazam, Magearna. Like I said, counterplay is pretty limited, honestly. And I'm sure there's going to be ways that we discover, right? Just like Specs Keldeo in ORAS OU. It was really crazy for a while, but they managed to get around it with different builds, such as Avery Tornadus T plus a Water Resist.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the case with Equiliibra, though, because like I said, counterplay right now, and I think it's not going to change that much, admittedly.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I just think that influence, it's going to stay there, really. It's not moving anywhere. I think it's a serious contender for S rank right now.
Yeah. I do have an idea. I want to know what you think of it.
Well, what is it?
We unban Zygarde.
Oh no. No.
That would just send Equilibra to the trash bin.
Just imagine switching into Doom Desire plus CB 1000 arrows. What do you do? Where's the answer? Like, everything's getting to a kill, dude.
That sounds like my hell, to be honest.
You could even run Earthquake on that. You could just Earthquake, and Doom Desire just hits the fucking Tornado Sea. It's over. Metagame's dead.
GG. See, again, this is why I'm not a leader in any of the forums. I say it mostly sarcastically, but it would be fun to just see what you could do with Zygarde plus Equilibra, just because, like you'd said, it just would wreck shit.
Yeah. It would be so crazy to deal with. I don't think I'd even play anymore. It would not only delete Megalakazam and Magearna from the game, it would delete me from the game. I'm not up for that.
Oh, man. It's a good thing Zygarde is off the table. You could run Zydog, though.
No. We cannot run that. That mon's garbage.
I don't know, man. You gotta test it to be sure. Yeah. Well, so that kind of... it's interesting that you sort of bring up these things about Libra, because you are also sort of the a big name in the OU sphere as well. And I was just wondering if you sort of had any comparisons that Libra has to Mons that might be prevalent in OU or other metagames.
In OU, like, I guess you could say Toxapex. Toxapex, amazing in OU. And, well, Mega Charizard Y, it's not a good Pokemon because of Toxapex. For example, It would be a good Pokemon without Toxapex, for sure.
Right. And now that Dougie's not around because of
Cannot trap it anymore.
Yeah. It's been that like
another
that way for a while.
Pokemon you could compare it to, I guess, would be... Well, I don't think there's any other Pokemon that outright deletes something, really. And that's what Magearna... In Cap, Magearna had a massive influence, right?
Right.
Best Pokemon in the meta for a while. But I don't think it outright deleted anything. Like, you could still use Mega Zam. It was still A+ in that meta. You could still overwhelm, especially defensive Magearna.
Right.
Wasn't unbeatable or anything.
And I feel like with Magearna too, you could still run like Magearna plus Lele plus Zam, and then like other things to just handle everything else. Whereas like now you really can't.
Yeah, you could, I guess, if the opponent decides not to scout Fighting Team Z on Magearna and Tapu Lele. But it's not going to be an efficient game plan anymore.
Right. Psychic Spam is also kind of dead. So let's now sort of move away a bit from Libra and talk about there was talks about in the Discord, I don't know if you were able to see them or not, and if you weren't, then we'll just cut this part out, but there was talks about making an upper cap and a lower cap where that way cap could sort of be treated as a true official other metagame. And I want to know what you thought of that and if you had any opinions.
Right. It's possible. I'd say we have a lot of time on our hands. It's possible.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. If we didn't have these 6 months, I think it is, 5 months, I definitely would have said no. Like, I think developing cap should be a priority, of course.
Right.
But right now, cap is definitely at its peak.
Yeah. Would you? And so the upper and lower cap split, do you think it should be, if we go down this path, it should be an even 14-14 split, or should it be more based on usage and we just sort of cut it off at a certain percentage?
Well, usage is going to be really hard because, admittedly, our ladder is just not good. I think most people realize this. Our ladder, it's not very accurate of what we play on the forums, right?
Right.
It's very different.
You know.
Like for whatever reason, Snailstream is number 2 on the ladder. You cannot tell me that's a fucking cap OU, man. That is not a possibility in my book.
Yeah, I really agree with you there. I feel, Frostbite joked about it best with me while we were talking, is that the cap ladder, everywhere on the cap ladder is low ladder.
It really is. Like, I don't ladder myself for reasons, like, it just frustrates me too much, really. Just get hacks and stuff like that. And I feel like I get more out of playing people I know are solid, like Stresh, Offler, SHSP. No offense to cap, of course. I mean, tiering it manually, I don't know which way would be the most efficient. Like, the VR method that we're currently using works okay. We could use it. We could keep using it, but I don't know if it's the most efficient out there.
Yeah, that is something that you have to consider, is how do you really construct tiers and metagames that aren't solely based on usage? Because, again, if you consider everything below B tier is cap UU, what happens when you get a mon like Equiliibra that just shuts down certain caps to the point where, like, they're still busted if Equiliibra isn't there, but because Equiliibra is there, it's just not
I saw
good.
in that discussion that banning cap Pokemon was not an option, at least like UUBL does it, right?
Right.
And I'm not a fan of the idea of nerfing Pokemon, or nerfing cap Pokemon specifically, because of cap UU. Because in future generations, like Sword and Shield, right? I anticipate the general ceiling to be much lower. I think that that's the direction they're going to go. So I don't really think it's a play to make.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people share that mentality, that thinking that next gen, Gen 8 OU is going to have a lot less power creep. There's probably not going to be... I would honestly be shocked if Landorus was in OU next gen, if it was even in next gen. So
yeah, I feel the same way, really. The only way I could see, like, legendaries, a lot of legendaries coming back, is if they fully utilize the whole region, or they make ultra wormholes come back. I don't know how, but maybe if they do right.
Like, no offense to you, but Game Freak is definitely not going to do that.
Yeah, I don't think so either. They're super dense.
Yeah, really.
It's not happening, but that's the only way I could see it happening, right?
Yeah, so last couple questions. Are there any other metagames or tiers outside of cap that you're really interested in right now?
OU, of course. I started off as an OU main. I would still consider myself an OU main. Still play that metagame a lot.
Yeah.
PU, of course. PU, the team or the tier that I have used one team in to get Rexed 3 times. It must be a good metagame, really. No,
is that a
joking.
team you're willing to share, or is
meta.
that something that we still have to just watch and try to
it's
scout?
dead now though because of the drops.
Yeah, if you want to send me that, I can put that in the description of this podcast.
It was like Auroras, Alolan Sand Slash, Beartic, Abomasnow, Sableye, and Lantern.
Ah, nice hail offense.
Yeah, just ice spam.
I love that.
Breaks everything.
Yeah, that's fun. And then, are there any sort of last things that you want to say? Any shout-outs, any trash talk, any other things you'd like to soapbox for?
Well, The main two teams that I would like to trash talk are out of the way by now. In the Kerfluffles and the Snailstorms, because they're good friends of mine. But I just want everyone to know that we're coming for you. We're coming for you, dude. We're gonna win this whole tournament. It's that simple.
We'll see about that.
I don't have many doubts about it. I'm very confident in my team.
Yeah, and that's good. It's kind of fun because our teams play each other in the final weeks of this of the main season, so I'm really excited for that matchup. Just because, regardless of how it turns out, your team is definitely one to watch, just because of how consistent I feel that they all are. So it'll be exciting to see the matchup when it comes.
We're definitely going to be able to consistently get wins with a few slots like. Stresh, I think, is definitely going to win the whole tournament. He's super good. Jordan, that dude's so fire. He's going to win everything.
He's looking clean.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Terra, I'm really excited to see what he does next. He's super creative, super good at the game too. And sure. Our other players are in general good too.
All right. Well, that's great. We're excited to see it. We're excited to hear it. And hopefully the rest of the week goes well for you and your team. And yeah.
Yeah, we're definitely going to win the whole tournament, dude. It's just that simple.
I disagree, but then again, I'm a little biased. But in any case, that sort of wraps up everything for this PodCAP. If you enjoyed this episode of PodCAP, please leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe. Feel free to drop any comments down below. If you have any requests or comments about questions I should ask any other future guests, just let me know. And we'll see you all for the next episode of PodCAP. Until then.